All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm Monica Duran, and I'm a customer success manager here at WorkRamp. So WorkRamp is a leading end-to-end training platform for educating employees and customers at scale. We're a unified learning management system that allows companies to share and create training content across multiple teams and provide an amazing education experience for customers. WorkRamp has the best-in-class learner and trainer experience, analytics integration to help teams scale at top companies like Zoom, Square, Slack, and Bitly. And with that said, we have one of my favorite customers, Katie Vermilyea from Bitly. And Katie, do you want to go ahead and give a brief introduction?
Sure. And Monica, I know you say that to everybody, but I know you mean it especially today, since you're stuck with me for the next 55 minutes.
I had to say it because you were on the line, so.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be in conversation with WorkRamp, and especially around one of my favorite topics, tech stack audits, which I know are not the sexiest things to be talking about on a Wednesday, but I'm here for them, and I'm glad you guys showed up too. So my experience, actually, I've been in the enablement space around 10 years now and stumbled into it, like a lot of things, from a previous career in sales. As you know, someone who graduated with an English degree during the height of the recession, sales was a great entry point. So ended up starting out in sales and account management, and then just happened to stumble into this space called sales enablement that I had no idea existed, but I got really excited about it. So I've had the pleasure of working for large Fortune 500 companies, such as Wolters Kluwer's CT Corporation division, as well as American Express. And then following that, I decided to get a change of pace and see how the other half lives, and went into the fun space of like startups that aren't quite startups, but they're not yet public, working for companies like Vimeo. And now I'm at Bitly and have been here, I think, about 6 or 7 months, and so far enjoying the ride. And getting to work with Monica is a great part of that. So I'm very excited to be here.
You're just saying that, Katie.
I mean, I didn't have anything else to do. I'm kind of captive in the house thanks to all of this. So I had a little bit of free time. So.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for that. So now let's dive into the topics for today. So our topic this morning is on building the ultimate enablement tech stack. So we're looking to have Katie here today, who brings a ton of enablement experience from American Express, Vimeo, and now Bitly, like she said. From startups at various stages to large corporations, Katie has seen it all, trust me. So,
and I'll tell everyone about it too, it's the other problem, but a lot of stories today.
So we'll cover 3 topics and spend about 10 minutes on each of them. So the first one is how to approach a tech stack audit. So how do you identify what technology you should be looking for, and how do you strategically build a tech stack that will help you achieve your goals? Then from there, we'll discuss best practices when going through procurement. So who do you need to get involved and how to sell this internally? And then lastly, we will cover tips on tech stack implementation, including how to get through change management and drive learner engagement. And this last topic is actually one of my favorites because it's something that I'm seeing more and more of. So I'm really excited to dive deeper into that with you. All right, so everyone who is joining us today, if you do have any questions, be sure to drop them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them at the end. So to kick things off, what I wanted to go ahead and do is just do a poll and see how many software tools are in your current tech stack. So we'll take a couple minutes to go ahead and take that poll.
And for those of you who don't know, because you may be new or you may have been like, this is a tough question, you can absolutely guess. Take a guess. We're not going to judge you. Only a little bit if you get it wrong, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, the poll option on Zoom was new to me. I didn't even know we could do that.
Yeah. I see. I'm enabling everyone everywhere.
Right?
Really
Q&A, a poll. I mean,
so much enabling happening here. This is one lit webinar, let me tell you.
All right, so that kind of just like gives us an overview of what everybody else is working with. So for our first topic, the tech stack audit, I have a couple questions to get things kicked off with you, Katie.
Yep, and actually, hold on. It looks like we did have an issue with the poll. So
no.
We have a couple people. So if you want to use the chat box and tell us how many you think might be in your tech stack, that'd be helpful. I think Corey had chimed in saying 3. Anybody else have any other guesses as to what might be? Oh, and it looks like
There it
the poll
is.
popping up. All right. All right. Sometimes you need a second take, and that's okay.
Right?
Yeah. I'm actually going to submit my poll answer, not to influence the scoring here, but I'll see what comes up.
I did too, because I didn't know how to get rid of that screen. So I was like, I guess I have to answer it.
Yeah. And we'll talk to the enablement professional over at WorkRamp, Monica, to see how close you were on that one as well.
Right.
So.
They're going to give me that disapproving look like Monica. No.
Taught you better than this. It's okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see. Give it one more second. All right, cool. All right, so like I mentioned, Katie, I wanted to go ahead and kick off the tech stack audit discussion with a couple of questions. So why do you need to do an audit, and how do you approach a tech stack audit?
Oh my gosh, yeah, why do you need to do an audit? Because it's no one ever got excited to do an audit of anything.
Right.
Like, I mean, think of a tax audit. Like maybe there's an accountant somewhere who's super jazzed about that, but you probably aren't. And so when it comes to taking an audit of your tech stack, it's really something I think that's mission critical. The way I always approach enablement is it's sort of adjacent to learning and development. And if you've ever worked heavily in the L&D space, typically L&D is one of the first things to get cut, no matter where you work. A lot of executives see it as a cost savings and an immediate win, because they're like, why do we need learning? It's not a big deal. And then they wonder why their reps can't get on the phone and have intelligent conversations. Well, maybe you needed the learning. So the first thing is you need to do an audit, because you need to understand like what kind of budget or what kind of tools you're working with to help quantify what it is that you do.
Right.
And by enabling those tools, you can help your folks be more productive and drive adoption. But the other thing is that I think it's just important for you to understand what are the tools that your employees are using. So whether you're enabling sales and customer success professionals, or really anyone maybe across the company, where maybe you have tools that are used outside of your traditional enablement department.
Right.
It's important to know what they're using so you can understand why they're using it, and is it the right tool for the job. So that's typically how I approach why you need one. So after you've rolled your eyes and said, really? Yes,
Right.
you do. So the other question you asked, Monica, was sort of how do you approach like breaking that apart? And the first thing I'll tell you is it's probably going to take about a month and a half. And you're like, really, why?
So really sit into it. Get ready for the long haul.
Just get ready. You might want to stock up on some wine or a beverage of your choice to get through this. But it is an essential business, as we've learned this week. So at least here in New York. So your liquor store is open. So
right. Lucky.
Right now, here's something to do. But yeah, what you can do is with that is first you want to do your research, and there's a couple ways to sort of go about that. First is understand what tools, what tech is actually sitting in your business. And I saw with the poll results, a lot of you are like around 5 to 7, or maybe 3 to 5, or some of you may just like, I have way too many. So what you can actually do with that is first research what you have and think about what your folks are using. And I find one of the easiest ways to find out what my people are using is to literally do side-by-side observation sessions with them.
Right.
And, Monica, when was the last time someone actually did like a side-by-side or a ride along with you?
That is a great question. I don't know if I can disclose that information.
I know I would say this is a safe space, but I'm pretty sure there's other WorkRamp employees on it. But let's just assume that your manager or someone from enablement sat with you and kind of watch you, not just on a call, right? But understanding what are the tools that you're using in order to research and prepare for that call. And then what are you doing following that call to make sure that all those activities are living somewhere that people can find them, right? Because we all know, and I love my sales reps, they're wonderful, like heart them. I know some of them may be on this call right now. But I know sometimes they get off a call and they're like, okay, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, but you didn't put that in Salesforce. You didn't send that follow-up email, and that follow-up email is definitely not logged in Salesforce. So not judging them, because sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. But I find like those observations are helpful, not just to understand what they're saying to customers, but understanding the tools that they're using to do their job. And to be able to say like, okay, let's document what tools they're using, what systems they're living in, and that gives you a start. And then once you have those systems, really understanding, are they using it effectively? And I'm one of those people that, you know, in a perfect world, I would pay someone to know the system for me, but I usually don't have that kind of budget, as I disclosed earlier. So I am one of those people who likes to actually spend time with those tools and poke some holes in them. So that's something that I look at too, is to say, like, is this a system I've used before? And if I haven't, I want to talk to some people who use it regularly, whether it's managers as well as individual contributors. And also if there's a systems owner where it doesn't sit with enablement, maybe operations or IT, getting someone in the room with me to have that conversation about it and show me how it works and show me what it's supposed to do. So research is a big part of that. And then understanding, like, you know, maybe something, this will help you understand what you have, but then it also helps you understand what the gaps are. Maybe there's technology that you don't have, whether it's like, you know, call recording, et cetera, that you're like, well, you know, this is a big gap in our stack that we should have with an organization of this size. So it helps you understand what you have, what could be better, and what you don't have that you probably need. And then last but not least, and I know we'll talk more about this, is vendor engagement. I think Chris, who's my AE at WorkRamp, is on this call, and he will tell you, I'm not the person you want to talk to. Like, if you're someone's doing tech stack audit, I'm not the person you want to talk to, because I will literally poke holes in your product, and I will tell you what's wrong with it. And
she's not lying,
I'm not
folks.
kidding. Yeah, I give a lot of feedback, and I will take a lot of feedback as well, to be very clear. But it's something important, and you have to go in with full transparency and advocate for yourself as well as your company. So I get every CSM or AE on the phone for any tool or system that we're using, and I basically give them the Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? And
Right.
so even if I'm new to a company, I want to know what they're doing for me and what we could be doing better. And I want someone who's going to be a strategic partner in that. And again, Monica and Chris, the reason I'm with you guys is because of you, and you let me have that voice, whether you want to hear what I say or not. But you, again, got 45 minutes about, so you're stuck with me. But I think, you know, that's something that's really important to us, is to really ask those tough questions. And a lot of times we're used to having to sell the roles that we do. But in this case, you actually get to be the buyer, and you get to be like the worst buyer. It's like doing a role play with one of your sales or account managers, and you're that terrible person that no one wants to get on the phone, and you need to advocate for yourself. So I think holding your vendors accountable is really big for me.
Man, what does that power feel like?
Let me tell you, it's not the
It's
wine.
a rush. It's a rush.
It's a little bit of a trip, and it's a good one. It's like, especially if you've had a bad day and you feel like no one's, let me tell you, your vendors are a captive audience, because you have money to spend, or
right.
you have money to spend. So it's really helpful. But I think it's really important. Like, I know the people I choose to work with are people that are key partners, and that I want to talk to on a regular basis as I need something, and to be strategic. And Monica, I think that's something that, you know, you do for us. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on is, what kind of questions do you ask your vendor? So besides, you know, what are you doing for us lately? Is there anything else in addition to that that we should be asking those vendors?
Oh, I ask them so many things. And I typically, one thing I'd recommend is have a list, right? Like, have a list of questions, especially like if you're talking to multiple vendors who do the same thing, have a list of questions that you ask them, right? And maybe sit down and be prepared to open up that tech stack with them, and have them walk you through and show you what it should be doing. But typically the questions I ask are, you know, well, what do you do? Like, what is your system built to do? And that helps you understand, like, what the key criteria is for that, so that you can understand and measure, is that system doing it well for you, or is it not? And maybe that's something you want to replace. The other thing I think about is, so what is it that your tool is designed to do? And then, you know, from an adoption standpoint, like, are we using everything that your tool is capable of, right? So if you were to say, like, on a percentage of like 1 to 100, like, is this built for what it's supposed to do? Like, are we adopting it in the way we should be, right? And if we are, and I'm still not impressed, then we have a problem. But if we're not, I want that person to be able to tell me, well, you're using it at about like 50%. And if you chose to integrate this, you could do this a whole lot better.
Right.
And really, it's just a chance to have a really candid conversation and call the baby ugly if it needs to be, and say maybe it needs a little bit of facelift. But you know, I think it's really being honest about what's there and asking for that honest opinion. So I think, like, typically with my questions, I'm pushing them to see, are they going to be candid and transparent about what our situation looks like, or do they think we're just another easy renewal? Because I think, having worked at large companies, typically you get a lot of clout, but when you work for companies that are of a smaller employee size, it's hard to get a seat at the table. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't hold them accountable for what they need to do for you.
Yeah, and I think with you being so candid and open, it honestly breaks down those barriers immediately. Like I know when I started working with you, immediately I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be a great relationship. She's going to be like open and honest. So this is going to be great.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, it's still early on, still early days, but yeah, I think it's, again, you have to advocate for yourself and you have to be your own champion because no one else is going to do that for you. And
Right.
I always liken it to, I have a friend who's a nurse and she always says, you know, I'm not just a nurse, I'm a patient advocate. And so in this case, like, you're not just an enablement professional, you're an advocate for your salespeople and your managers and your all of those folks who need you and rely on you to really help support and drive those key outcomes. That's your job, is to advocate for them. And so every vendor conversation, I'm advocating to make sure my reps have the best tools to do their job most effectively in the least amount of clicks.
Right. Preach, Katie, preach.
I know, I should get that tattooed somewhere.
I know. So one quick question that we got early on when people were registering is, for early stage startups, how do you assess what you need to invest in first with your tech stack?
Oh God. And that's so tough, right? I think first of all, like, look at your side by side, like do your side by sides, right? And think about where's the low hanging fruit, right? And there are some things that are going to be cheaper to implement than other things. And it really, I think the first question I would ask is, I've done side by sides, but what's your budget? Like, and that's going to your manager or going to your VP and saying, how much money do I have, right? Because that's going to help you allocate like where you should be spending that money. So you can say, okay, well, I may not be able to get like the Ferrari, but I can get a really nice Subaru and it's still going to do the job. Is it going to be as flashy as the Ferrari? Probably not, but it's going to get me where I need to go safely, you know, and it's reliable for a number of years until maybe we have that Ferrari budget. But you know, it's like having champagne taste with beer bottle pockets. Like, I've got beer money, I don't have champagne money, but you can get really good beer with beer money. So I'll settle for that.
These analogies are great.
I know, it's someone's dad somewhere is really enjoying this webinar, but it's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that stands out to me, is understanding what's your budget, right? Because when you know what your budget is, that's going to help you allocate. So especially in a startup, either they don't know what the budget is, which is, oh, that's great, right? Because that means you have all the money to spend. So just like we're going shopping, like you can go Pretty Woman this and like just go down, you know, like Rodeo Drive and just get all the good stuff, right? If you know what you're looking for, get all the good stuff. Because nobody knows, which means you have all the money to spend. It's like your parents just left the house for a weekend and just do everything, right? As long as it works. But most companies, there's probably some sort of either existing tools that you have in place or there's an existing budget. So you have to think about where you can find the money to make this work. And that might be something that you need to rip and replace. It might be a case of looking at licenses and finding money there, which I think we'll talk about on our next question. Yep. But I think those are all things that you want to look at. But I think the number one thing is, what's your budget? And then how do you make that budget work for you?
Got it. So then now on the flip side of that, how would you say this changes for more mature companies like American Express or a PayPal, for instance?
Yeah, you know, it's really funny because everyone thinks that they always have so much more money because they have more employees. And the truth of the matter is, their budget is probably not that much bigger than yours. It's usually based on employee count in a lot of companies. And you also have to have champions of learning at the top down. So like if you are in an organization that is a learning culture, you know, you'll get that money. But it's funny, when in my division of Amex, like we literally had a shoestring budget to make all of this work. And we're literally saying, okay, well, if we want to do this on-site event, can I pull money from the sales budget to be able to do this? And, you know, so you're literally like scraping things together. So just because it looks shiny on the outside and has a great logo doesn't mean you're not going to have the same problems. So it's learning to do more with less, no matter where you are. And again, there are people who appreciate that fiscal responsibility, and because they appreciate how responsible you are, they will give you that money. But we'll talk about making the case for that in a few minutes.
I love that. Well, the last thing I have for this topic is, one of the questions was, how do you source an LMS?
How do you source an LMS? Oh, do you want to peek inside my brain? I know Rachel.
I don't think we have that much time.
We don't have that much time. Oh, darn. All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that, but really how to source an LMS. I think it's like sourcing any new technology or any replacement technology. You want to have at least 10 to 11 vendors selected that you can evaluate, and you want to create, I usually use a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet to create evaluation criteria. And I look for, does it integrate with the systems that I already have? You know, because if it's not going to talk to those other tools, I'm not going to buy it. Because that means I'm not going to get adoption for my other tools either, which is not going to help anybody. And then I also want to say, like, you know, depending on what kind of budget you have, if you don't have the budget to actually create your own content, You want to look at content creation. Is it something that's native to the tool, or is there third-party software that you're going to have to buy, or maybe use a third party to help you design that? You know, and use instructional design services for that, which again, depending on your budget, you may have that money and that's great. But not everybody does. And if you do have that money, do you want to spend that money for someone to create a PowerPoint or like a SCORM file? Or would you rather spend that money to maybe use on video production that you can integrate with some native tools? So thinking about your budget again, and then thinking about what does learning look like within your organization is going to help you create the criteria for a really successful LMS sourcing project.
Great. And I think that kind of goes into our next topic, which is on tips on navigating through financials, and then also identifying those key cross-functional partners.
Okay.
So to you, Katie, what are some tips on navigating through financials?
Oh, you know, it's funny that everyone asks me this because I'm actually really good. I really enjoy conversations with CFOs and finance people, but if you knew how bad I was personally with money, it would not be a conversation we'd be having.
It would scare you.
It's you don't want to look at my bank account. But yeah, I think first of all, know what you're paying your vendors. And one thing I do as part of that audit is I always identify how much money we're spending on them per year or per license or whatever those fees are, and break those apart. A lot of times that's where you can find money for some of these other projects. For example, at Bitly, I was doing our audit process and we were paying for a tool that's provided by LinkedIn that we know doesn't come cheap. But we were paying, I think, around like $1,400 to $1,600 a license for that. And we had procured at least 10 more licenses than we actually needed.
Wow.
And so when you have that kind of money just sitting there unused because you don't even have that number of employees to fill those license seats and you're not hiring for that number of employees, why are we paying for those licenses? Like, we're literally paying them money for nothing. It's,
I bet your CFO was happy about that. He was like, give me those 10
was.
licenses back.
I mean, and we find this, and this is literally, it's really interesting, right? Because you don't know how the person before you approached this or whoever like took this on, especially in startups. There's like someone who takes it on because they're like, oh, I used this at my last company, so let's do it. But you don't know like who sourced this and do they have the business acumen to properly do this? And some people have really great intentions, but the road to hell is also paved with those. So you want to really take a look at that. And a lot of times like the biggest waste of money and the easiest way to find money is looking at user licenses. And we found them across all of our products and platforms that we were using in the Bitly tech stack. And we have downgraded those. And that saved us at least 20 grand.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's low-hanging fruit. I know. Well, and then I spent it on something else, but because if you don't spend that money, then they just take it away.
Oh yeah.
So find something else to spend that money on. But yeah, so I think we talked about like knowing what you're paying your vendors, knowing your user licenses, but you asked about stakeholders, which is really important. And especially in learning and development, you have to be selling what it is that you do for your company. And you have to have a really good story to tell. So thus being in sales was really helpful for me. And that English degree really got put to good use. I'm sure my parents are really proud right now, but that this is what my life has become, talking about tech stacks and, you know, a master's in English that I'm using to do this. So no finance was involved in this. But I think what's really interesting is finding those people who are willing to champion for you. So you may not always have a seat at the table when it comes to your operating committee or to your executive team, but who's going to champion for you? I'm really lucky that I have an amazing VP of HR that I actually report into. Other times you may be reporting into a VP of sales or a VP of sales ops, or maybe not a VP yet and you're working on that. But you want to build those internal champions who are willing to go to bat for you. Because if you sell them, they will absolutely sell someone else. And for me, when we looked at procuring WorkRamp, I was able to say, well, how do we use this outside of just sales and our customer success teams? How do we make this a company-wide thing that everyone can use? And therefore, I'm justifying the budget that we're spending on this. And for me, our VP of HR is using it to help with compliance tracking for things like harassment training, classroom activities, as well as post-classroom e-signature requirements. So we're using it for compliance purposes. And then we also share the training to reinforce our marketing stuff. So our marketing team has a seat at the table as well. They get to preview all of the stuff that we design. And then we use it for all of our new hire onboarding. And so every employee that comes into Bitly actually goes through a new hire program that's run by our enablement team. And what's really great about that is that we built in WorkRamp to that as well. So now every single leader in my organization has a stake in this, and they have skin in the game, because any new hire they bring on board is going to have to go through this program. And all of our product training is built into the LMS. So that way you're baking it in and it becomes part of the culture, so much that we have a WorkRamp Slack icon just for this. So
Yes.
everyone's like, they're not like, when am I getting more training? They're like, when am I getting a new WorkRamp? And I'm like, next week.
It's a verb now.
It's a thing. And yeah, and I think that's what's really important, is it becomes part of your culture so that they don't remember a time when they didn't have it.
Right.
But I think the key stakeholders are getting people to see the value because you're demonstrating it for their folks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so then that brings me to my next question is, how do you go about measuring the success of a system?
Oh, it's so important. I think really adoption. Yeah, because at some point someone's going to ask you, well, we gave you that money. What did you do with it?
Yeah.
Like, I went shopping? Like, is that a problem? But it's so pretty. It's so shiny. Look at this. So
You're going to love it.
You're going to love it. I promise you. Like, you sell them the dream, and then the reality is like much less exciting. But in our case, the reality is very exciting. And so I think what we did to really kind of, get people to see the successes, we said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do, right? We're going to use this to roll out training, and we make sure that, again, everybody who's assigned something completes it. And if they don't complete it, like Liam Neeson would say in Taken, I will find you and I will train you. And like, this is how this will work. And so we make everybody do the trainings that like we assign, and we keep on them to make sure that we have high completion rates. We aspire to 100, I'll settle for 95. And I'll let a manager coach to that. But we will send out an email and Slack notices as well. And if someone doesn't complete it within the time frame, all of the leaders get an email saying, these are the people who have not completed this. Can you please push on your side? So that way, again, we have management stakeholders in this as well to reinforce. But I think adoption's big, and driving completion rates is helpful for that. And then we literally, it's one of those things I will not stop talking about it. And we show people, we encourage people to do the trainings as well. We create libraries so that anybody who wants to have learning at their fingertips can. And I think making it accessible and available to everybody is super important to me. And hopefully it eventually shows in our sales pipeline. So when I think about what we're training to, is this something that we're actively selling, and can I use this as a metric? And I can't say that, oh, well, it was because of our training that we sold X number of percent, but I can say our training influenced that we sold X number of percent. And that's important to tell.
Got it. And for anybody who's wondering what Katie's training material looks like, it's exactly how she speaks. So all those memes, all those quotes are in her training material.
Just with visuals, because we preach to all learning styles. And actually, Mary, who's on our call today, just helped us record a video, which is very exciting. So we even have we got her background music and everything. So so we go all in on everything. But
it keeps people awake. I'm serious.
I like to think so. And if anyone's curious as to what our material looks like and wants a sample, we can talk about that offline. Absolutely happy to share. Yeah.
Awesome. I highly recommend that, by the way.
Yeah.
But for our third topic, moving on to the next thing, is auditing and procurement. And for this, I believe we're going to try to do another poll.
Hopefully.
So hopefully this works again. And the poll is going to ask you is, do you know your procurement process? Just check I do or no idea. And I'm going to be honest on this one.
As if you weren't honest on the last one.
Right.
Okay. Really. The transparency here is just...
I know. I'll give that a second. Okay. All right. Now that the results are in.
Waiting for them over
and
here.
And the winner is, wow, 50-50.
So Monica, either you and I just answered this or other people put in. But because I definitely do. I'm gonna guess
no
yours
idea.
Is a hard no. Yeah. That's okay. So,
all right. Yeah, go ahead, Katie, if you want to take it away with these results.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So we talked about auditing and procurement, right? And what are the best practices, I think was what you were going to go into, and sort of how to sell this. And I think we talked about that, right? One is once you've got your key partners identified, you then have to go in and sell to them. And how do you create that business case? We definitely talked about driving adoption with other teams. The other thing we didn't get into was what's the technology that's coming with that system? And is there a cross-functional use in another department? So for example, we're using the IRAD technology that WorkRamp provided us, and we love it. But we also realized that there's an integration with Zendesk, and we were trying to build a buzz around learning. And at the time, like, again, no one really gets excited to come to a learning, if we're honest. I mean, I like to think everyone's super excited when I send them an invite, but I know they'd rather be like making money. I get that. But one of the things that we looked at was we have the IRADs, which are the self-guided tutorials that they can click through, which was really important to me, especially for people who are more tactile in their learning style, to have that resource. So when I was looking at IRAD, I knew it had an integration with Zendesk, and we use Zendesk for all of our support documentation. And my dream was that people would see this, get excited, and say, I want that. And in good news, they did. And so I happened to share it in a Slack channel and was like, hey, just sharing this, that we put this out there. And they're like, wait, like we can have this? And I'm like, I've got one license. And so our one support guy has this license, and it's a win-win for both of us because he can start to put it in our customer-facing documentation. But then he's also creating tutorials that I can then use for learning. So it's less work I need to do, which is always a good thing. So that was really great. And I think identifying like how we can help spread out the cost of something like this by saying, well, no, it's being used cross-functionally. So it's not just training, it's thinking about how other people can use the technology to do what they need to do, whether it's, you know, HR and compliance, or again, support, who knew? Those are some ways to help justify the costs there. And I think that was really helpful. The other thing is, again, depending on your procurement process, there's probably someone from finance involved. If there's not, I don't know how long your company's going to be around, but there should be someone from finance involved. And finance, I find, is either your biggest detractor or your biggest champion. And it's just a matter of how you position. So for me, I was really lucky that we got a brand new CFO, I think about a month after I started. And he's one of those folks who, he doesn't look just at the numbers. He looks at what story are the numbers telling, right? What's the story behind the numbers? And he wants to know that. And I think he's, I would say we're very much alike, and we both like to poke holes in things and prove them wrong. And so, so when I built my business case for my LMS, he very much appreciated just like how I source this, and like, you know, having, like, I shared all my documentation. I had this beautiful, like, multi-column spreadsheet with multiple rows, and it was very clear, like the matrices of like how we came to this decision. And then he also was someone who, it turned out, was a champion of learning, and he'd seen what learning could do at other organizations. But having that conversation with him helped me understand that he would be a champion for this, and that he was supportive as long as we could figure out where the money was coming from and show that we had a plan for putting this in place. Because again, we were both new to each other. Right. And now he's just like, yes, I totally get this. Like, this makes sense. And he actually checked in about a month ago. He's like, how's it going? And I'm like, it's opened up doors for my direct report to have some development opportunity, like the sales team's doing it and all these other things. And he's like, I hear them talking about it, just so you know. And I'm like, that was like a milestone, I think, for us. It's like, people are talking about it. He's like, and in a positive way. So that was really big. And especially because he's key in the procurement process, I knew I wouldn't hit a roadblock with him once he understood what this was going to do and how this was going to have a broader impact. So I think getting that stakeholder involved and knowing what the procurement process looks like for you allows you to identify who those stakeholders are. If you're trying to sell the wrong person and they're not part of the process, you're kind of screwed. Right. It's going to take that much longer, because then you have to make a case and build that relationship all over again. Whereas I was lucky in the fact that we had changed our procurement process. It took longer than I thought it would, as Chris can attest. But, you know, I had someone early on who was willing to help me push the other people who were involved in the process, because he's like, listen, you're holding me up. If, like, he as the CFO was like, well, they're holding me up if they're taking time to review this. And he's like, I don't understand what they need to do. And I know Mary's on this call. Mary, don't tell Scott and everyone I said that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we looked at as well. And so, like, again, just having those champions and identifying cross-functional uses for a lot of these tools is really big. So I know that's a lot to unpack, but very exciting.
No, you did a great job. And I think that was very thorough. But early on, you mentioned about having a voice. So how do you choose a vendor that will make sure you have a voice?
Oh, well, you know, it really depends on how they take my feedback, to be honest.
They're like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah. And like, you know, I talked to a couple vendors, and one of the LMS vendors I got on the phone was actually, we had been using a subsidiary company of them that I wasn't impressed with, and actually was probably being sunsetted based on what I could tell from all their branding and such. And so when I called their new parent company, and I've actually used them before in the past when I worked at Amex, and they're made for like large enterprise businesses, and they do really well. They have a great user interface, but the backend admin interface looks like it's built on Windows 98. So I knew that going in, what I was up against. And when we got on the phone with them, like, you know, they were very much like, well, this is like small potatoes for me. Like the AE didn't even really want to have a conversation about this. And I said, well, when's our renewal up? And he's like, November. And I said, do you have a copy of the contract you can send to us? Yes. And I said, well, are you going to set up a demo with us? I said, because I am evaluating vendors. And I was very transparent about my approach. And he never got back to me. And that meant a lot. Like, listen, I get that I'm at Bitly. We are, you know, not the biggest vendor on the block. And we're not the largest company on the block, but at the same time, like the job you have now is not necessarily the job you have, you know, 2 years from now or a month from now, who knows? Not that I'm trying to talk myself out of this, but I think like for me, his big miss there was the fact that he didn't think about the fact that I'm part of different multiple peer communities and I talk to other people about the technology that we use. Right. And he missed a huge champion point. And I think that was, you know, a slight to my ego for sure. But it was, to me, it was a miss for him because I'm thinking, you know, a customer is a customer. And even if we maybe don't have the same amount of presence as a larger enterprise customer would have, we want someone who's going to show up for us when we need help. And that was a sign to me that you didn't take our money seriously, which means I don't want to spend my money with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you use the phrase, we are doing a tech stack audit?
Oh yeah, I told them that. I literally told them, I said, I'm evaluating all of my vendors. And I said, and I'm looking to see what needs to stay or go. And I said, I am sourcing an LMS. Tell me why, you know, show me what you can do for us. Like, was very clear, very transparent. And again, going back to the questions from earlier, like having a list of questions and being very transparent about what you're looking to do. And it didn't matter to him. And I'm like, well, you know what, then I don't want to work with you.
Well, thank God that LMS did not work out for you.
I know, you guys, yay for WorkRamp and for us as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that was really big for me. And so like when I did choose like who we were evaluating, it was very much like, what's the working relationship going to be like? Because I don't want a one night stand to say like, okay, we sold you that deal and then you'll never hear from us again. And I'm like, but I have questions. I need help. And like, I'm not a stage 5 clinger, but come on. And you know, and that was something that I asked for is like, what would the post-sale relationship be like? And because I know the experience we create at Bitly for our customers is very much like, you have a dedicated account manager. We have an enterprise support team just for customers like you who are at this price point. Like, we will roll out the red carpet for you. You get the white glove treatment. And not that I'm saying, I mean, I want the white glove treatment, but again, I have champagne taste with a beer bottle budget. And so like, I have high expectations, and if you don't ask, you don't get. And so that was really important for me when I thought about what we were looking for.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think everything you're saying is dead on with that.
Yeah, I know. And so again, I know you and Chris are on this call, and you guys, that explains why she was so painful during the process. You're welcome. It's fine. Yeah.
Well, I think you definitely had a point when you said post sales, because they're drawn in on this actual sales process.
Oh, they like the shiny part. Yeah.
What's going to happen afterwards? Like, are you just going to leave me in the dust? I'm going to be fending for myself, or is this an ongoing relationship that's going to happen?
Yeah. And the other thing too is like, and if you want to window into that, another question you can ask is, can I talk to one of your customers? Right? Like, because if they don't have referenceable customers, then they either A, don't have customers, or they have very unhappy customers who you don't want them to talk to you. And so that's another thing. If you're not quite sure what the truth is behind this, like, ask to talk to a customer and have that customer, if they can, show you what their instance looks like, right? And you can see, like, again, if you know enough to be dangerous, you know what you're looking for, and you know when something's working well and when something's working poorly.
Right. Yeah. Take notes, people.
Yeah.
Ask other customers. All right. So the last topic we have is implementation and tech stack changes. So how do you implement a new tech stack, and how did you do it at Bitly?
All right. Well, you know, I know for some people, they're coming into this under duress because they're like, oh my gosh, I need a new LMS because we never had one. And now we have a virtual workforce for who knows how long. And that's okay. You're going to be okay.
Everyone calm down. Yeah. We have you. It's fine.
You can do this, and you're not alone. You're not the first people to do it. You won't be the last. But we were really lucky in the fact that I came on at Bitly at the end of September, and I knew we needed a new LMS like pretty much by October. And so I'd started my procurement process in October, hoping it would go faster, but it ended up dragging out through like end of December. And I will say, I am one of those people who works through the holidays. Some people like to take off. I respect your choices, but when everyone's out of the office is when I get the most work done. So I will say that is the beauty of this whole situation for me. It's like no one's coming by my desk to ask me questions. And
she might be a workaholic, just letting you all
but
know.
that's another issue that we're working on. That's a personal problem. Yeah, but it is yeah, it's interesting. And so like for me, like I was so excited, like you know, to have this. Like I joked with my husband, it was my Christmas gift, and he didn't realize the bar was so low, and that was all it took. And it was a new learning management system. It didn't come cheap though for everyone out there, but yeah. And so what happened was at the end of December, like most people were wrapping up. I typically don't like to do training like mid to late December just because I want people to be focused on closing deals or family, and we try to respect that space. But for me, it's a great time to make some changes and build stuff out. And so it was actually really cool is we had a new hire starting in January, and we had a chance to rebuild our LMS. And so what we did was we focused on getting the LMS in place, me playing around with it and breaking a bunch of stuff. And then we picked just our core new hire program, and we rewrote all of the material over that like 2-week period and built that into WorkRamp because it did need to be rebuilt anyway. So it was actually a really cool process for us to be able to go in and have it. And then we essentially beta tested it with the one new hire we had starting like the second week of January. So we built like 2 or 3 modules for him to go through, and he actually gave us really good feedback, which was awesome. And then we continue to iterate on that learning path for him and for everyone else who started. So we now have a complete end-to-end system where we track our classroom-based training as well as all of our virtual training. And we've built in those challenges as well so that there are key milestones and we can measure all of that. And best of all, we can report on this. And having metrics that matter is huge. And so I think we can report on how many people we're training, how many hours they're spending on learning, which is something else that we want to quantify. And then looking to see if there's any impact on this that this has on ramp time and retention as well.
Right. I think something big that you mentioned is the feedback, because I do notice that some customers, they build out these trainings, but they don't actually get the feedback from some people. And I feel like that's key because they're the ones going through the actual training, and you know, you want to know that experience.
Yeah. And it's funny, again, I know I joked earlier that I'm not good with my personal finances, but I also am probably not the most tech savvy person. If I'm even as much, I talk a good game, but I'm probably not that person. But I love the way engineers approach things. And again, any engineering people on the call, you'll hate that I'm going to butcher this, but like the idea of like alpha and beta testing and thinking about like what that looks like is really interesting to approach to help drive user adoption. And even though those are terms we use a lot in tech and especially in engineering, I think there is a chance to be applying those more to how we approach learning. So typically the way I approach all of our guides, whether it's classroom-based or virtual training through WorkRamp, is I actually have a little champion team that I've assembled of people who actually like get excited about learning material and want to sneak peek. And I actually will have them go through stuff and document feedback on like page by page. And we literally do like user acceptance testing. And that's been really fun. And it's been a great way to get, again, we talked about having a voice, right? It's a great way to give my individual contributors a voice in the process so that they can influence the design or say, no, I want more of this, or this was a little confusing, or like, I didn't see this and I'd love training on this. And I actually had someone Slack me the other day and was like, I really want training on this. Like, and she felt comfortable enough to reach out. Like, and she was like, is this on the roadmap for you at all? So again, it's like we're almost an engineering or product dev team as opposed to a training team. But I love that we're creating that culture where people are asking for what they need and for what they want. And there's a need for training at Bitly, and that's what's huge.
Well, like you mentioned, these technologies are not always sexy. So how do you go about actually, you know, getting people engaged and excited to want to learn something new?
Yeah, you know, I think, well, one, I do have, again, someone's dad somewhere is going to love this webinar. So if you're looking for a Father's Day gift, just send this. He'll laugh. It'll be great. But I think it's getting people excited to learn. And I typically, luckily, I have a direct report, Bree, who helps to co-facilitate. And we have very different styles, but they're complementary styles. And so I am like dad jokes and like some real talk and a couple other things. Again, I'm not doing my comedy tour anytime soon, but I think Bree is very much, but I'm also very much like, I'm not really about the warm and fuzzies. I can fake it, but I'm not a hug it out type of person, whereas Bree will hug it out with everyone. And I love that about her. And again, when you don't know how to do something, you pay someone who can do that. And so I pay Bree to do that, as well as many other things that she does very well. And, but that's where she brings a lot of value, is because she brings that warm and fuzzy. So I think we know our audience well enough, and we do surveys to say, like, we understand what their learning style is, and we design learning around that. So we know what our culture of learning looks like. And I think we make it fun, right? I mean, you know, something for me that I've seen over the past 10 years is in enablement is like, you can now put, whether you say it GIF or GIF, you can now put those in PowerPoint presentations. Right. Like, that used to be something you could not do. And while death by PowerPoint is still a thing with too many words on a slide, and it's especially bad in SaaS companies, I think really good, thoughtful design and really good activities are really important. And I think one thing that we're hearing a lot today, especially as people are making more video calls and phone calls and the rise of Zoom in our current times, is that people want to interact with each other. And so creating activities and ways for it to make it fun, whether it's a virtual activity or a classroom-based activity, get people excited to the point where, again, they're not rolling their eyes and saying, oh God, it's another learning. They're saying, oh great, it's another learning. And like, they literally are excited to get there. They show up on time, they're engaged, and they're excited. And I think we do that by, again, giving them a voice at the table, giving them a seat, and creating peer champions so that they can be like, hey, actually, I saw this material, and like, it's going to be really fun. Like, I promise you, like, Katie gave me a sneak peek. So it's almost like sending out screeners. So again, my time at Vimeo is useful for my film terms. So I'm like, we're sending out like screeners for the coming soon releases, and like getting some like buzz around that is really important. And then like getting your managers involved. And the biggest thing is that you can do all the legwork, but if your managers aren't championing this and it's not coming from the top down, you're wasting your breath. And so I'm really lucky that the folks I work with at Bitly and at other organizations are very much champions of learning, and they'll let you take those risks in your learning style to be able to like do something different, have fun with it, and, you know, and just walk away knowing that there's some reinforcement involved. And especially because people have to coach to it after the session. So that's a really big thing, is making sure that our managers are equipped to do that. And I'm, again, very lucky that I have a great set of VPs who champion this and support this and are on board with, you know, the little bit of crazy that it takes to work for enablement. So it's I think that's how I kind of approach it. But
I think one of the key things you mentioned is make it fun. And I mean, add in those GIFs. Like a GIF goes a long way, people.
I get a lot of compliments now, and it's really upped my street cred, because I'm not cool, but I've somehow convinced them that I'm slightly like chill, and they're like I come for the learning, but I stay for the GIFs, and I'm like, I'm here for it. I'm okay with that. If that works for you, I'm here for it. And I think just having something fun, having something themed, and you know, especially like depending on what industry you work in. And there are some cases, like, especially if you're like trying to train to OSHA requirements, like not really fun, right? And you can't necessarily go off script, but there are ways to build in activities, even if you do have to read scripted learning or compose scripted learning, to make it fun and make it engaging. And some sort of interactions go a long way, whether it's, again, a fun joke or something like that, that allows you to say, listen, like, unless you're doing training for doctors, we're probably not curing anything here. Like, we're shortening lengths. Like, let's level up and be real about this. It doesn't mean we can't have fun while we're doing it. And the other thing I would add too, like, if it's not fun for your learners, it's not going to be fun for you. And like, if I'm up there, like, and I'm feeling painful and I'm feeling like this is uncomfortable, like, they're feeling the exact same way, right? Or if I'm going through a learning and I'm bored while writing it, like, which is sometimes, again, maybe my material's not that great and I need to work on that, but or ask a product manager to be like, okay, can you give me something more here? But I think, how do you make something that's fun and easy and repeatable? And that's really what I look for, and that it resonates with them. And everyone has their own style, and the way I do it, it's not going to necessarily work for Bree, as I mentioned, but you have to find your own unique voice and bring that value. I know not everyone's going to love that voice, but find ways to speak to everyone and use peer influence to be able to carry that message along. Yeah. I just wrote my book here, so this is good.
I just wrote my book.
It's fine.
Well, one of the last questions I wanted to touch on that's very relevant is what recommendations would you have for onboarding plans for remote workers? You know, seeing that we're in some unusual times right now, you know, companies are having to quickly adapt. So what kind of advice and recommendations would you give to them?
We are one of those companies. And luckily, I kind of saw this coming at one point. And so historically, so speaking of spend, right? My CFO will love to hear this. Other people will not love to hear this. But we actually fly any employee who starts in either a Denver office or a San Francisco office to New York to actually train on site, which is really cool on one hand. also costs a lot of money depending on how many people you're
Right.
hiring that year. And not everyone can always make that accommodation to come out for like a week and be in New York. Although, again, before I moved to New York, I totally would have done that. And so one of the things we were thinking about is when I got our LMS was to say, well, if we didn't necessarily have the funds or we wanted to use that money on something else, could we do this virtually? And what we actually found out is that we could. So all of our product training was built in virtually. We use classroom events to actually track our virtual training. So we use the video integration for events to be able to host like face-to-face meetings like this and have those scheduled, which is really helpful. So it's not just all like self-guided training. It's also, there is a face to virtual face element involved in that. And then we actually did, which was a really great idea. We typically would go around the office and like do like a meet and greet and like you do a little tour and like meet everyone for like an hour and get some fun facts and do like a Bitly bingo exercise.
Right.
What we ended up doing this time was we did a meeting where anyone could join and it was just like a coffee date, kind of like this. People could pop in and just say hi to our new hire and like ask some questions and like
I love that.
so kind of like a virtual happy hour idea, but just like with the celebration being the new hire. And we had great attendance. People joined, and there are ways to create those connections virtually, even if you're not necessarily in front of someone. But having a really good LMS is going to help you do that because it creates something repeatable, so you're not sitting on webinars like for 8 hours a day.
Right.
No offense, I love this, Monica, but you know, it's, eventually
I don't want to be on it all day. Okay.
Yeah, it's the thing.
Well, cool. That about wraps up everything that I wanted to discuss with you. So again, Katie, thank you so much for letting us pick your brain. You offered a ton of valuable information and we really appreciate it. As for everyone who registered for this webinar, we will be sending out the presentation later on. So be on the lookout for that. And then until next time, I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend or week.
Yeah.
All
Awesome.
right.
Thanks again, Monica. I appreciate it.
No problem. Take care, everyone.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.